I appreciate you guys coming out. I see some friendly faces that might have been at our SMX party last night, and if I somehow lose my voice during this presentation, it has nothing to do with how long I stayed at that party or how long I stayed with my friends afterwards. So I apologize for that in advance. SMX really tries to accelerate our clients' impact on the world, and we think that there's new approaches that our public sector customers really need to take and focus on to understand how to do IT transformation and modernization, and we want to share that with you today. It's a fairly quick agenda. I was looking at the slides. There's maybe 15 slides of content. We wanted to leave plenty of time for questions and answers. We have a lot of people from SMX here also that you can interact with afterwards. And if the triple espresso that I had this morning has any impact, these 15 slides might get done in 7.5 minutes, and we could call this a lightning session instead of the breakout session. But I think there's some good nuggets in here, and I'm kind of excited to talk to you guys about it. First is next-gen modern application characteristics, what we think they look like. Next-gen managed services characteristics, how you can manage and operate in a modernized way. We've recognized that the buzzwords of DevSecOps and even the buzzwords of next-gen maybe haven't been as successful as everybody's wanted them to be. And there's reasons that we found why this can sometimes break in larger enterprises and larger organizations. And there's ways to be able to fix this. One of the key things that we're going to try to come across is the concept of site reliability engineering. And I don't know if that's extremely familiar to you guys. It's a concept that's been around for a long time. But just quick show of hands. Have you guys implemented SRE within your organizations? A few? So good, great. We think that there's a fairly simple formula for success, and we're going to talk through some of the next steps. So let's get into what the characteristics of a next-gen modern application are. Clearly being able to be self-healing, auto-scaling, having mechanisms within that application that can respond to events and stimulus within the application. State management is a key part of what that is, how you can ensure that you're not going to have drift in your configurations. Being able to have the guardrails around infrastructure, governance, security, and policy, and have that codified. Your code obviously being updated via pipelines, being able to rapidly be able to deploy patches, really looking at your application and the operations of that through a software lens, looking at hyper-automation. And what it results in is these applications have very low manual processes associated with it, very low friction, high resiliency, high security built in, easy to update and innovate. And clearly this is how all of our apps work, right? All of your apps now are working like this. It's all like clockwork. It's all easy. And we know that that's not the case. In fact, if you're trying to measure how well you've come along in the digital transformation process, this is a good checklist. Look at all of your applications and look at which ones have these characteristics that are in prod. The ultimate test is in prod we trust. Prod, look at all of your applications, look at the characteristics of those applications, and assess yourself, have we built these applications with reduced toil on the back end? Have we built them effectively to be self-healing and have the automation? And one of the key things is that I didn't mention a tech stack on here at all. Last year at Summit, when I gave a similar presentation, I said I would only mention Kubernetes 3 times throughout the entire presentation. This year, I promised to mention Kubernetes only 2 times through the entire presentation, so you won't hear it again. It's not about the tech stack. It's about the framework. It's about the characteristics of the application. So then if you look at these applications that have these characteristics, how do you do the managed services backend? What are the characteristics of this XOps framework running in the cloud to get the most value out of the cloud? And one of the things that we found is that there's really no reason to have delineation between managed services and managed security services when you're in a cloud environment. You've got an API-based framework. You've got full observability into these environments. You really should look at blurring the lines between traditional managed services and managed security services. And part of that is that you want to focus on high observability. You have so much information in these next-gen applications. And even you can add observability to your existing legacy applications. That's our concept there of everything is telemetry. Your next-gen managed services provider really wants to look at AI ops, or any kind of capability that allows you to reduce alert fatigue or respond in a more autonomic manner to events that are happening in the environment. And we're going to talk about that. Clearly, you've heard AWS and you've heard a lot of organizations talk about the importance of FinOps. Again, when you're in an environment that's as elastic as a cloud environment and you're building on cloud-native capabilities, you really want to make sure that these characteristics are embedded. Your team should also be building IP, and that IP should be how you're responding to events. So if you've got traditional glass watchers in your organization that are waiting for events to occur, look at the event, get a ticket for the event, log on to the box or log on to the console, resolve it manually, and then go back to glass watching, you're not building IP. You're not building anything that's allowing you to build real runbook automation so the next time those events happen, you've got a way to automate the response to that event. You want to get your entire team, the culture of the team, to look at the entire life cycle of application services through a software lens. And we're going to be saying that a lot in this presentation, but that's really one of the key components, is that the entire life cycle, not just the application, not just what you're building fast with your tech stack, we're talking about all of the XOps frameworks. And ideally, what you want is to reduce the mean time to resolve. You want to be able to, if you lay down a lot of these capabilities in code, you're making it a lot easier for your government customers to achieve an ATO. You're creating a repeatable process that's codified, that's consuming these services, that's helping you get there. And again, very similar to the application framework, low manual toil, high resiliency, highly secure, and cost optimized. One other key thing to note is that these next-gen managed services characteristics, they can be applied to your legacy monolithic applications. There's things that you can do to opportunistically refactor your applications to be able to consume and use a modernized approach to your XOps capabilities. So what is the true value proposition? It's not just about creating cloud-native development services. It's about looking at the entire product lifecycle, again, through that software lens. Everybody needs to think like a developer in your organization. Everybody needs to think through how can you really scale effectively in your organization, especially large enterprises that have software factories or that are creating a significant amount of application value. What you want, though, is you want to look at the value creators in your organization, the ones that are actually building the business logic, building the application functionality, and you want to do everything you can to reduce the burden on those value creators so they can create value more effectively, more securely. And then when you're looking at the next-gen MSPs, we're all leveraging AI and machine learning. We're leveraging all of the immense data that's in the cloud to increase observability in these applications and have contextual autonomic response to these events, or building runbook automation libraries, continuing to build IP for your modern ops infrastructure that can be reused across all of your application teams. And then you'll have a cloud management platform that's tailored to a model that we're calling the next-gen model, which is DevSecOps plus SRE to really do digital transformation, and I'm going to get into that. And it's these next-gen managed service providers that are providing the foundation for this accelerated digital transformation. Surprisingly, I think everybody would probably agree, the #1 challenge is not a technical challenge. We suggest that it's an alignment challenge, that you're trying to create. The builders and the creators, they're having to do the FinOps side, they're having to do the ops side, they're doing security. You've maybe created these integrated product teams, and they're starting to flourish. They're starting to build a tremendous amount of value, and they're being able to build code faster and build applications faster in the cloud. But they're creating an operations burden or a tail that's unsustainable. your builders are burdened. And DevSecOps was supposed to fix this. Having the integrated teams and no silos was supposed to reduce the friction and the delays between the development, the security, and the operations. But what every large organization that we've worked with has found is that, yes, it's accelerated code, but we didn't attack the main problems around how do we modernize all of the ops infrastructure and security infrastructure and make it easier for the developers to consume these capabilities. There was a gap in how these shared services were created and how it was bridged so the developers and your value creators could create more. And we're gonna talk through some of those gaps. And we think it starts with leveraging site reliability engineering. And if you want like the simple definition, it's what if your entire operations department was built by a software developer and not through the legacy processes that you built it before? What if you looked at operations and security completely through a software developer's perspective? You'll get more operational efficiencies, you'll be able to scale. So when we're looking at software managing software, not people managing hardware, or people managing software configurations. Effectively, what we're trying to do is extend the DevOps mindset to all the functional areas: infrastructure, operations, security, financial. Apply that mindset across the entire organization, and you'll be able to achieve some of these efficiencies. But what we've noted is that the dev teams really know how to develop, or maybe they know how to leverage cloud-native services, but there's another team that needs to be involved that's creating these sets of APIs and consumable services to reduce the operations and security burden, and that's this SRE team. So what do we think it needs to look like? In almost every organization that we go into, large organizations that we go into, or public sector customers, and you ask the CIO or you ask the INO lead, how efficient is your operations team? How efficient have you been able to actually create integrated product teams that are leveraging a DevSecOps framework where that team isn't overburdened on the ops side? And if you look at that fulcrum, and if you look at the way that we've migrated customers into cloud environments without refactoring, without modernizing the ops side, most of your resources are going towards sustainment, security, and operations toil versus the value creators, versus the ones that are actually delivering the services that, that the country needs or that your public sector customers need. And it looks like that left side where the resources are highly overweighted towards the SecOps side. We want to shift that fulcrum left. We want to be able to elevate the applications, allow you to have more focus on your app developers and your value creators, and less focus on security and operations. This does not mean security and operations is less important. I'm not stating that at all. What I'm stating is that we should really look at modernizing the SecOps side of the house in the same way we looked at modernizing how we build cloud-native applications. We should look at things that allow us to have serverless response, runbook automation, autonomic capabilities, reduction in alert fatigue, all of the things that we've been overly burdened by that's a manual process. Those things aren't delivering value to your organization. The builders and creators are delivering the value. The security ops side is protective. It's a necessary function, but it isn't differentiated. So what we think is that if you can provide or create an SRE capability that's going to facilitate how your DevSecOps teams can reduce the SecOps burden and leverage it earlier in the pipeline, we have tremendous examples where we've helped organizations do this, and they've been able to increase the number of resources that are doing application development, that are creating value, and reducing the burden on the SecOps side. We've got cases in the nonprofit sector, with ISVs, with defense and combatant commands, increasing the time to ATO, to actually being able to build something and deploy something by leveraging this model. And what ends up happening is that the apps kind of get elevated and the security ops burden gets reduced. One other kind of nitpicky thing, we still talk about sustainment when we're talking about DoD customers and federal customers. We should just get rid of that word. There shouldn't be that every time you build an application, a percentage of that spend on application goes towards sustainment. We should talk about continuous improvement. No applications should just stop or have any kind of reduction in being able to add value. If we start looking at the SRE model as continuous improvement, and we start looking at ways of how we can budget to service level objectives where we can continue to create value and maybe continue to reduce the SecOps burden, every dollar that you save on the SecOps side should be reapplied to the value creation side, and that's what we want to get to. We want to get to this, this flywheel churn where we're able to build applications faster, accelerate their time to delivery, and again, reduce the friction and the toil in the environment. And this is where you want to get to. It looks simple, but you have to make that investment to elevate your applications, to modernize, and again, by elevating the applications, you're elevating your operations. You're modernizing how you do IT operations. You're taking that same approach that maybe you've been successful with in developing capabilities, and you're making sure that you have a team that's dedicated to providing that on the ops side. So we talk about this a lot. I think you've probably heard this a bunch anyhow. Don't treat the cloud as a destination. If you're doing migration, it's not about moving from one environment to the cloud environment and doing a lift and shift. Those are really, really ugly words to use, because you can still not fundamentally change how the application behaves or have to recode an application. You can still opportunistically refactor that application to be able to leverage these modern services. For example, you're not going to have, overnight, your teams are not going to magically know how to build cloud-native applications on a new technology stack and have everything be automated. But you can modernize how those applications are managed. You can take a 3-tier stack, and you can add auto-scaling. You can do blue-green deployments. You can change how the code is updated through a DevOps pipeline. You can do all of the, you can add the telemetry that you need to these environments. And this is really critical because you're not going to want to look at your entire application portfolio and rebuild everything, because you're not adding value when you rebuild. You add value when you reduce labor in some one location and able to add more valuable services in another. By looking at even your legacy applications and applying some of this opportunistic refactoring, you're going to immediately get value, and that value is going to continue to return to you. Then you'll be able to prioritize the applications that really probably should be rebuilt. Maybe so it could leverage a new capability in the cloud or some new innovation from AWS. Maybe it's for just higher performance, higher scale, or multi-region. Sometimes you do have to rewrite applications to be able to do that. This gives you that opportunity to look across your entire portfolio and prioritize the things that you do, how it's going to add value back into the organization. So we think ROAR, return on R, specifically on app refactoring, is key to how you're assessing your environment when you want to move to digital transformation and next-gen IT modernization. Click. That's not working either. Alexa, please move to the next slide. There we go. Again, elevate your apps. Even the legacy laggards that I was talking about. Change the deployment paradigm. Look at, this is really important. Stop having your people watch glass and manually respond to events. Look through your, if you're an INO leader or a CIO, look through your tickets and look at how many of them are probably repeat tickets. How many of them, our process is to log into the application, restart the service, check a couple status things, and then on. And a traditional ops guy or a sysadmin might think that that's a viable approach to doing things. A developer or a sysops guy that is looking at this through a software lens is hopefully lazy, because developers, that's one of their greatest strengths. They try to find the easiest way out. They would rather write it once, maybe it takes 5 times as long, but you're responding to 20 of these events a year, it's going to pay for itself. And that's just one of the keys, is that look at ways to continually build IP in your organization. And that IP isn't just the applications, it's how you're responding to the applications. It's how you're reducing the toil, the manual processes, so software can manage software and not people managing software. And again, everything is code. Even your entire, how you lay out your infrastructure, how you do state management, how you build your landing zones, every single bit of that, there's no real reason for anybody to go into the console, point, click, and deploy. It all should be done through code. And if the security guys are in here, they're going to love that, because everything's repeatable. They can look at the code, they can look at the lines of the code, and they can create a boundary that's sustainable and easy to add new capability to. So how do you get there? There's a new concept that we think is really critical to the SRE concept. And that's this concept of elastic engineering, where in the government, we're constantly being asked, provide a labor category and provide number of hours. What if your team isn't fixed 1 labor cat, 2 labor cats of this, 3 labor cats of this? What if you could build an elastic team that's maybe 25% dev, 50% security person, 25% sysops person, 2 full-time AI ops configuration people, whatever it is. Figure out what that minimal team needs to be and look through your entire application portfolio, and the developers are the ones that should be creating this backlog. The value creator guys should be going, here are the things that I need to get focused on so I can add value. Here are the 40 things that I'd like you guys to build. New configurations around telemetry for performance management for the application, or I want to make sure that it's leveraging a new security paradigm or new security tools. Or I want to make sure that every time I tag a particular application that has these guardrails automatically applied. You'll build this burn down list, and you'll be able to assign teams to it. You'll have elastic engineering teams that you can assign to a specific, to address a specific problem. And as that backlog gets bigger, you might want to add another elastic team. You might want to add a squad that can solve that problem. And as long as that backlog is creating value, as in every single request that's on there will have what we think it'll take to solve the problem and how much value it's going to build back to the business, you want to continually burn down that backlog. If this is going to take 10 hours to build and fix with this particular squad, but it's going to save 20 hours, I'm going to prioritize that, and I'm going to assign that team to that. But if I've got a backlog that can save 4,000 hours of work, then why not have 5 teams to do that until that backlog gets down? So this concept of elastic engineering is kind of critical to this IT modernization process. What if your DevSecOps pipeline allowed your developers to develop? Kind of novel, but that's what we're trying to do. We want them to focus on the business logic or the value creation side of the house. We still want them to be responsible as an integrated product team, as a DevSecOps team. They're still responsible for security and operations. You want them to be on the hook to get that call if the application breaks, because they're lazy and they're going to make sure that they don't have to be on the hook at 4 o'clock in the morning. But if you talk to AWS, do you think they have an operations center with 100,000 people that are constantly doing stuff? No, they have integrated product teams that are responsible for the whole life cycle of the product. What we're saying is have another team that's providing API consumable service that's giving you the security and operations capability to those developers. It's still DevSecOps, but the developers are consuming, instead of building things, they're looking at a set of shared services that the SRE teams are building, and it's really critical. And you're reducing that SecOps burden through automation and API consumption. So what have we talked about today? Infrastructure as code is that anything you deploy should not be through a manual process, it should be software. DevSecOps is key, the SRE is key, and looking at things again as a next-gen managed services capability. So you want to build all your foundational layer, you want to build your landing zone, you want to build that application footprint as managed templated code. You want to make sure that your DevSecOps pipelines are available for your developers, and as early in the process, in the build process as possible, they're consuming the guardrail services, they're consuming the security services, they have interfaces to the AIOps model for reduced alert fatigue and enhanced telemetry. They're leveraging a set of runbook automations that your team is constantly building. They're leveraging a set of autonomic response mechanisms, because the same problem that product team A had, it's likely that product team B could use something like that. A simple example, providing a push button capability or a serverless capability to go into an application, identify a service that needs to be restarted, restarting that service, and then immediately checking to see if you've got a proper health check. That's what your ops team might be doing manually now, and it's not adding any value. Spend the 5 hours, the 10 hours to build it for that particular service, make it reusable throughout your entire organization, and have it be consumable by the dev team. And the dev team is not going to figure all of this out by themselves. They need a trusted advisor to walk them through how they can easily consume. What is the best practice for consuming this? What is the best way of leveraging native capabilities within the cloud for getting the most performance out of that? Your developers aren't going to be great at performance engineering, but your SRE teams are. If you have an SRE team that's focused on continuous improvement and is really looking at managing to SLOs and SLAs, they're going to be the team that's going to sit with the devs and say, this is how you can consume it, this is how we built it for other applications, here's how it works. Let that SRE team be the bridge between the developers and operations team. What not to do. It's great when I see people talking about a containerized orchestration framework, and they're using that particular tech stack, and they're building code more effectively than they've done in the past. But they didn't modernize the operations side. They didn't modernize how they're going to get to an ATO in an accelerated fashion. They didn't look at where they could start to reuse capabilities. They focused on how can I build code faster. So don't modernize your apps without modernizing your unified operations. And don't let legacy processes and legacy approaches cloud your decisions. You want to look, again, it's probably boring the 19th time I've said it, look at the entire application lifecycle through a software lens. Empower your teams to think like developers. Empower your I&O leaders to think like developers. Make sure your CIOs understand the value of creating IP in your organization that isn't just application-centric. So it sounds simple, so what do? Again, look at migration and modernization. Use a proven framework to assess your application portfolio. I want you to look at those next-gen characteristics, and I want you to look across your app, just choose 5 to 10 of your applications randomly. Map how you are in terms of really saying that you have a modern application portfolio. Are your characteristics of that application really focused on removing any of the human elements, any of the toil, any of the manual processes that are undifferentiated? Is it focused on removing that burden? Have you removed that burden? Do your apps run like clockwork? When something happens, does something automatically happen to fix that thing happening? You want to assess your entire portfolio, and you want to really understand where are the things that I can do in my organization to make my applications more like this. That's that backlog. That's what you're going to start to build. And that backlog, each thing that you look at fixing is going to have a value associated with it. It's going to have a cost associated with it and a value. Clearly, prioritize the ones that have the lower cost and the higher value output and burn that backlog down, and you're going to start to get more efficient. So again, assess your readiness. Shameless plug, work with AWS or an AWS Premier Partner to help you assess your portfolio. And then really build your next-gen aligned operations model prior to migration or modernization. Make it so even when you move these legacy laggard applications, they have a framework that can be consumed that makes it easier to manage them in the cloud. And all you have to do is have a diagram like this and you have success. It really is you have to look at the investment. How are you going to elevate your apps, and how are you going to elevate your operations to support those elevated apps? How are you going to make sure that you have that foundational layer and approach? And the way to get that alignment so the balance can shift towards your builders and creators, the way you can create that alignment is have teams, elastic engineering teams, focused on aligning the XOps capabilities and make sure they're consumable in an API-driven manner, in a software-driven manner, to allow those dev teams to be successful and to flourish. I told you I could get through it fast. The espresso really kicked in at the end. We have about 15 minutes for Q&A. The team's going to be up here too if you want to interact with them. The microphones will come around, but I am curious if just general response from people in the audience. Do you feel like your operations team is really efficient? Or do you feel like if you look at the personnel and you look at where you're spending your dollars, you might be overburdened on the security and ops side and not really focused on the value creation side? Are you all seeing that in your organizations? Is there anybody that would say, my ops team is absolutely awesome because they don't have to do any work, it's all been automated for them? Good, I'm seeing laughing at least. And it's not a knock on ops. It's a statement about how we used to do things in a legacy manner. That's how we did things in a data center. We had smart hands people that would walk around in a data center, look at blinky lights, and troubleshoot and figure out what they had to do next. Or we'd have an event happen and somebody would go, oh, I got to log into the server. You should never have to log into a server, ever. In a cloud environment, you should be able to blow that away and rebuild from scratch. You should be able to automate your patch process. You should be able to do code updates as often and as frequently as you want. If they don't work, you should be able to roll it back. You should never have to worry about configuration drift because somebody at 3 o'clock in the morning that didn't have enough caffeine went in and changed a network security group role or changed an ACL or changed something, and you don't have any record of it. If you do everything as infrastructure as code, if you do everything as software, there's non-repudiation to every API component, and you know exactly what's happening in your environment. It can be state managed. It's a beautiful thing when you see it working in action. So I'll open up for questions or comments.
Hey, so first of all, I wanted to say I agree with everything that you said. But what do you do when there's a situation where you have one contracting company who's doing this, saying, hey, we need to enable the creators, we need to focus on value creation, and there's a different contracting company that owns the security side of things. So you're there saying like, hey, we need to do DevSecOps, it's gonna be much more secure this way. And then my counterpart at this other company, it's literally his job to not only maintain, but increase his footprint at the same agency. And he's never gonna agree to saying, hey, we're gonna reduce your headcount and add to this other company's headcount. So how do you deal with that?
Spencer, have you ever seen that ever in any organization that we've ever dealt with? Have there ever been political things when we're working on a contractual basis with customers? It's hard, but if you can get everybody aligned, especially if you can get your government customer aligned with the outcome that you're trying to achieve, you're trying to allow company A to build better, faster. And you're trying to create these capabilities, and they all do need to be shared. It's procurement has been, you can't do elastic engineering in the government very well. You can't, because they want labor categories, they want fixed number of hours, or they want maybe a fixed price, but that, for a company like us, or like your company, to be able to do stuff at a fixed price, it's a challenge because we have to have a very fixed set of deliverables. When you're continuously building a backlog, you can't predict what that backlog is, but you can show that this amount of labor hours is going to result in this amount of labor savings. And it's a tough procurement model. It's something that we're all going to have to fight We're going to have to really try hard to get our procurement offices and our contracting offices to understand these concepts of elastic engineering, to understand how shared services really need to be shared across contracts, across application teams. And hopefully, when people are doing cloud procurements, they will focus on that fundamental aspect of what is the SRE, continuous improvement team, going to do across the entire organization. That's one thing that can be centralized in an organization, and all of the development teams, if you have a software factory, all of the different contractors in the software factory can have a common set of standards and a common things that they can consume that helps them reach ATO faster, meet the agency's mandates for security and accreditation, and build better. There really needs to be that focus on this new type of organization and new type of skill set around that. Great question. Clearly, you guys did not have as much coffee as me. Somebody? Anyone? Oh, there we go. Great.
How do you start the process, profiling the environment, et cetera? Are there automated methods for doing that, or are we limited to essentially interviewing everybody?
Yeah, there are, even within AWS, there are automated tools for being able to assess the characteristics of an application. So you understand the communication patterns, you understand the size, the scope, the amount of data, storage, CPU, memory, things of that. But it really is that look at that application and understand its characteristics that you can quickly glean through that interview process, but it's a combination. When you've got a massive organization that has thousands of applications, you just want to identify common patterns. There's 3-tier applications with a Linux front end and a MySQL back end, right? I have 20 of these. Great. What can we do to create that foundational pattern for those applications so we can lay it down and have them rebuilt to meet an accreditation capability or to meet, just to have a common configuration across those? And what you'll find is that in very large organizations that have, they tend to build towards patterns. One component of your organization is leveraging Oracle, even though they don't need it, but they're leveraging Oracle. Another part might be leveraging .NET applications that are all on Microsoft SQL, that are all 3-tier. And other ones might be leveraging containerized applications. You'll find those patterns, and you'll then prioritize based on those patterns, what are the things that we can do to impact the delivery and reduce the operations toil and the accreditation burden associated with it. But there's consulting involved. There isn't push a button and have, and Anthony, do you know of any? that really kind of tell you everything that you need to know. And the thing is, you want that opportunity to talk with the app teams also. You want that opportunity to understand what their burden is and where they're stalled and where they feel like they're down here doing this much dev and this much SecOps. And you want to find out what are the main things that you can do to reduce that burden and alleviate that for them. Thank you.
So moving from the standard labor category scheme that we have in typical contracting to the pod and squad model, how are you going to assure your government customer that's used to chasing unicorns and having key personnel in place, how do you convince them that they're getting that high quality that can take charge and get things done from day one?
I think contractually, and one of the great things about the SRE framework itself is that everything is based on service level objectives. And if you can say, I can maintain these service level objectives for you with this much labor, then you have a fixed amount of capacity that should be elastic, where I'm saving you 1,000 hours and I'm giving you 1,000 hours over here, but you've got to allow me to have the right squad, the right elastic engineering team to solve that problem, to then free up the labor over here. So it has to be a common understanding where you're looking at that backlog and you're contractually agreeing that doing this work is this amount of time and this amount of cost, and you're agreeing that over the next 2 years or 3 years, or whatever period of time, is how much you're going to be saving, then you should allow that team to be elastic. And you should be able to continuously look at that through that lens and say, we've done this, and it's reduced your ops team burden by this much. It should be agreed upon. It should be something that that you can work out with your contracting customer, like you do with fixed price. Fixed price has always been tricky in the government, right? Because I'll tell you that it's done, and your definition of done is going to be different than mine. So you have to have that negotiation that says, this is the definition of done. Well, we can also do the same thing. This is the definition of value created or time saved.